Every month, our host, Phil Buchanan, is joined by thought leaders from a variety of different backgrounds and paths of life. Through the stories and lessons shared, listeners can gain knowledge and new perspectives. We promise you will find value and insight from this episode. Welcome to the Cannon Curve. Let's get started by meeting today's guest.
You know, there are months that I get excited, and then there are months that I get tremendously excited for the guests that we have on the Cannon Curve. And this is one of those tremendously excited months because I've got one longtime friend and one shorter time friend that are joining me here today from Chantalle Financial Group. First, my longtime friend is John Pierce. John is head of business development and recruiting at Chantalle, and John and I go back having built, designed, and implemented recruiting programs for financial services firms in every region of the country. We've enjoyed a lot of long days and a lot of long nights during that period of time. And John, I'm so happy you've agreed to join us this month.
Well, thanks, Phil. I'm thrilled to be here, and I just want to thank you and the whole Cannon family. We love working with you on the recruiting side, and more importantly, we really appreciate working with you with our growth officers, helping our financial professionals to grow. And we're thrilled to work with you, and thank you for having us today.
Well, John, thank you. And next up, my friend of a shorter period of time, but a friend nonetheless, is Chantalle Couba. She is the Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer and the Chief of Staff for the Office of the CEO for Chantalle. Chantalle, that sounds like at least 2.5 jobs. So I'm assuming that you're only working half days. You're just picking the 12 hours that you want to work. How does that play out?
That's right. A very long time boss told me you can work any 14 hours a day you'd like to. And so we embrace flexibility.
Well, fantastic. Well, listen, I want to thank both of you for being here today. We're recording this session in the month of June. June is recognized around the globe as Pride Month, recognizing the struggles, but also the successes of those in the LGBTQ plus community. It is the month that we represent Juneteenth, which obviously celebrates Emancipation Days for those who were enslaved here in the U.S. June of 2021 represents a 1-year anniversary from some of the most significant protests that our country has seen in decades, highlighting the unequal treatment of people of color, notably by police, but by others. And so it brings us, and Chantalle, we'll go to you first on this. It brings us to a challenging question, a challenging issue for those of us in the financial services. The financial services industry has made strides in the year, no question about that. But the challenge is that there is so much more to be done. And for a lot of professionals within the industry, they question, well, what needs to be done around diversity, around inclusion? And you genuinely caused me to stop and think when we were in our pre-call plan for this podcast, when you framed it differently. You said, don't think about it from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. Think about it from a perspective of understanding humans, all humans, more deeply. That was a fantastic way to look at it. Where does that come from? Because I think it's a great way to look at it. And why are you so passionate about that?
Thank you, Phil. I think, look, ultimately, I'm a lover of understanding people more deeply. And, I've been trained to do that both in my professional life as well as my academic life. And so anything that I could learn, if I were selling anything or thinking about delivering anything to a customer, if I can understand their needs more distinctly, personally, I'd be interested. Now, maybe I can be accused of being a nerd or loving to understand other people more deeply, but really that is the frame when we talk about diversity at Chantalle and even just for the industry. I think the frame that we have to acknowledge is, we want to start, particularly when we, I think, are of the majority, we want to start with, this is a moral imperative. And Absolutely, it is. I'm unapologetic about being pro-humanity and everyone having equal rights. And I think our leadership, and the majority of our employees and advisors are as well. However, it's also a commercial imperative, and we don't have to kind of shy away from that. We talk a lot in diversity work or about the elephant in the room. And I think to be able to say this is a commercial imperative, whether we talk about the changing demographics of advisors, whether we talk about the changing demographics of our potential clients and customers in the United States alone, much less globally. The fact of the matter is, I know I grew up in this field being told, it's coming, the world is changing. And I feel like we're at an inflection point. We're here, not just because people are aging out, or we look at where, early, mid, and late boomers are in terms of their potential wealth transfer, but really just in general, where we are as a country, where we are as a society. I think we're at an inflection point in many places. And I think it's an exciting time to think about, how does your firm address that? What does that mean to the profession of helping people prepare for the rest of their lives and even for future generations?
All right. So great perspective there. And you and I talked about this. A lot of the listeners to this podcast are seasoned leaders that have been running organizations or divisions of organizations for years. But we also have many emerging leaders that look to this and other podcasts as ways of gaining perspective and insight. And one of the things that we hear in feedback is, all right, so is there a checklist? Are there things that I need to be doing? What are the one or two or three things that I, as an emerging leader in my organization, should be doing with regard to the issue of diversity, inclusion, equality? Like, help us out right there. I sense that there's not a pat formula. Help from your lens on what leaders need to be thinking about specifically on these issues.
Certainly. I think the first and foremost thing is, like any business strategy, what's your why, right? So defining for whether it's, your individual practice, or if you're in a larger situation all the way up to a corporate entity, what's your why? I think it's very easy and appealing and perhaps popular right now to kind of jump into this space or jump in on an issue. And then you get in it, and it's not easy work, and it's not easy to substantiate, when you have detractors or you have, clients who don't feel the same way as you. And so I'd really encourage people to define for you and your core teams what your why is. And then within that, what's your mission in your why? And everything, it's not a one size fits all, right? So the larger your firm, perhaps you desire for your, financial professionals to look like the communities that they serve, right? Or perhaps you're very intentional about a growth strategy. But you could also say, we're in this to see more people into the field who traditionally are underrepresented in the field. And you might choose to go about it in a more philanthropic manner through scholarships and, commitments to mentorship and sponsorship. So I think it's very important to start with your why, be clear about your mission for your practice or for your firm. And then from there, decide, we talk about this a lot internally at Cetera, where you stand is on a continuum. You don't have to be, the front and leading firm in that space. You don't have to be a laggard. I think you can choose and define for your organization what feels right. Maybe you give philanthropically, anonymously. Maybe you sponsor students in internships, and that's publicly available information, or scholarships. Maybe you are very intentional about only hiring women and senior leaders for a period of time to change the representation of your leadership teams. I think you, again, can choose where you stand on that continuum and what feels right for you and your customers and your company's mission.
So, John, let's jump in with you right there. I go back to 20 years ago, now with the perspective that Chantalle has just laid out. 20 years ago, when we were working with different organizations and deciding recruiting programs and plans and training the regional directors to have an ongoing sustainable recruiting system. We did talk about the fact that you do have to be intentional with regard to your recruiting, and why are you recruiting? From your perspective, given the nature of what we just heard from Chantalle, what has changed most significantly about recruiting in the financial services arena in the year 2021? And let's put COVID aside for a moment, and let's just think about it from the change in the look of our financial advisor community.
Sure, great question, and really great commentary, Chantalle. I want to add one other thing, because you mentioned emerging leaders are listening to this. You have to put a stake in the ground and believe. And as emerging a leader, you need to understand that changing how we go about our business is an economic imperative. It's an economic imperative. The wealth creation is being done by different segments that it wasn't happening 20 years ago. Job creation is happening in different segments that it wasn't 20 years ago. Wealth distribution is happening in segments that it wasn't 20 years ago. And so you need to embrace the fact that this is an economic imperative. And if you choose to ignore it, your business will go away long term. Directly to your question, Phil, the world's changed in how to survive and thrive as a financial professional. And the beauty of being privately owned is that Cetera has made a significant investment in key initiatives for next-gen advisors. Technology requirements and next-gen advisors demand different things. They're not cold calling, they're not hitting the pavement. You need to have a robust tech stack. You need to have a very socially informed digital strategy and social strategy. And you really need to go deep on marketing, like our resiliency pack. And so the nice thing about working at Cetera is that we don't have to worry about the 90-day reporting period. We can continue to invest again and again and again without fear. And we're doing that right now for next-gen financial professionals. And those next-gen financial professionals, to your point, have to look like the marketplace. And that is today, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. If we don't reflect the marketplace, we won't have a business.
So, Chantalle, I want you to pick up on the commentary that John outlines there. We do need to be reflective. The industry must be reflective of the markets that it serves. But you and I got into a real interesting dialogue in the pre-call that the beauty of understanding humans more deeply is the ability to work with people across spectrums. And that could be racial spectrums, it could be gender spectrums, it could be sexual orientation spectrums. When you understand human beings more deeply, you become more valuable across the footprint. Am I thinking about that the right way?
I think that's absolutely right. And, we're all familiar now with behavioral finance, and I consider, diversity and expansion of some of the research that comes out of behavioral finance, which covers off on, who are you selling to? Who do you want to do business with? Who are you recruiting? Who do you want leading? What are we anticipating is happening to those people across our lives? We are all familiar with so much research and dialogue about who are millennials and what do they want and what do they not want. And, one of the jokes about that is that John and I know from a trusted advisor at the University of Pennsylvania is, well, let's wait and see what happens when they start having kids. So every, generation is a cohort. And as you start, coupling off, maybe or maybe not, or choosing to procreate or not. And all of these are standard life decisions that our parents made and that we've made. And now, generations behind us are making. And so really, if you can step back and kind of depersonalize, what does this group of people do? And rather look at what do human beings do, right? We pretty much all do the same 10 things. We might do them different ways or at different times. And then from there, you can start filtering in and looking into a community's needs, more deeply. One of the things I love that we have an advisor led diversity council as well as an employee-led council. And so I love that we allow for that advisor-led voice to have its distinct perspective around how they focus on diversity. We have the same for our employees, and at times we come together and at times we intentionally work different ways. But the thing that I'm really loving about our advisor-led council is, we're allowing voices to come out and say, here are some distinct planning considerations of, X or Y or Z. And it's really helpful for those to come out in a safe space and a place where you can ask your colleague, just like we can all ask each other questions now. Well, how does it feel, to have elderly parents and be raising children at the same time? Is there a difference that maybe I'm missing, between your culture, your experience, or, anything you can do to make that feel more personalized? And, we are finding that that's very helpful to all of us in our planning around our conversations and how we better meet our clients' needs.
You mentioned behavioral finance. The most popular program, educational program that Canon has done over the last 18 months for the financial services industry is behavioral finance, because that is truly understanding humans and how they make decisions and what influences those decisions. And it's intriguing. I love the way that you frame the conversation and engage on the conversation, because it simplifies it. I think for many people, this is basically about human decency. It is about human to human connectivity and engagement. And it's vital that we look at it through that lens, because then that opens each of us up to opportunities for growth. Let me ask you this question, and it's not so much about any one organization, but the industry overall. I'm going to start first with this. Where has the industry to date gotten it wrong? And then I'm going to let you follow that up with, where has the industry to date gotten it right? What are the ends of the spectrum on this from your perspective?
Relative to diversity, Phil, because
yes.
Certainly, aspect to John about overall. I mean, I think wrong is there's so much rich information. One of the things I love about this industry is how rich our data is about who are Americans, who are investors, who are our clients, who are our customers, who are our friends. What are they spending on? What are they saving for? And then ultimately, where's their money going as they transfer their wealth? And I think there's so much rich information. And so when you kind of come into just the general middle, there's just a lot of legacy space around, well, clients want advisors that look like them, and clients want this, and clients want that. And I just would really encourage all of us who are forward thinking to really challenge that assumption and, find that data and find those people to connect with, to have broader conversations. And that's certainly not just within our field, but outside of our field. And I think that you'll find that there are many more connection points into, diverse experiences, diverse communities, and really diverse lifestyle plans that are presently unfolding in front of us than even our kind of current vision as a field looks into. So I would say that that's our opportunity, right? And then in terms of, where do we, again, another opportunity, as I think we think about, well, we have to develop talent, very, very early into the field. And I think there's a missed opportunity to recognize that people change careers on average 3 to 4 times now across a lifetime. There are many transferable skills that can bring you into the financial planning field that, maybe historically you didn't grow up planning to do that, but you've gained an asset base, you've gained an exposure and potential client base where that is something that's potentially of interest to you. So I think, people who are out there having conversations and thinking about, well, who do I succeed my practice to? I'd say, don't just look to someone to the left or right of you, but think more broadly. And then I think there are, very young people, undergraduate level people are slightly more interested in entrepreneurship today than they are in going into traditional corporate pathway jobs. And I think there's a huge opportunity to bring a view of this field to young people and say, you are your own business owner. You are an entrepreneur when you go into this business. And now when you couple that with technology and innovative products, you have the opportunity to create a space that probably most people haven't thought about. And so I think that's, another opportunity to bring a view at this. And in terms of what we're doing right, I think there are, many firms such as ours and beyond that are working very hard to, quite frankly, create opportunistic situations that, deliver immediate value and investment to diverse and female advisors. And I think if you want that opportunity, it's there. Obviously, if you're already in the game with proven performance, if you're early in the game, I think you can, if you raise your hand, you can find someone who is very interested in investing in you and helping you see this into the career that perhaps you'd hope for it to be.
All right. So, John, I want to take that theme and turn to you because, recruiting used to be something that was done at most at the college level, and then with great intentionality, obviously, once you got into your career, one organization might be recruiting you from another organization. But Chantalle hit on a great point right there. There's a responsibility that the industry has to make our industry professionally attractive to every gender, race, orientation, every community that is out there. What are the steps this industry needs to be taking? And I know that different segments of the industry are doing different things right now, but from your point of view, what are the 1, 2, 3 things that companies really need to be thinking about so that this is a professionally attractive place for young people to aspire to be professionally engaged?
Great question, Phil. And I first would say there's a lot of big organizations in our industry that have to be like Cetera, which is small. We have over 8,000 financial professionals, but because we have 5 communities, each community has a voice. Each community can pick up the phone and talk to the president of that community. Each community has the ability for peer-to-peer sharing and best practice sharing. And so I think that bigger firms need to move away from you're a rep number or a rep code and be more humanistic. When you pick up this call for a service issue, they actually pick up the phone and talk to you. And so I think many firms should try to think to replicate how Cetera is big, but really is small. And then you take that and you then tie that to the investments that are needed to hit some of the segments that Chantalle talked about. We hit next gen earlier, but I think it's critical that we are really seeding high school and college kids to get into our business earlier than what we have. I completely concur with career changers. And so with career changers, you need to make the capital commitment to provide a safety net for that person to come in and join and get her feet on the ground and have the ability to thrive. And then finally, I think you need to do what Cetera really is doing, which is making very strategic investments in technology, marketing, and social that will appeal to professionals that maybe had shied away from coming into our business because they know in the past it's been rough and tumble and cold call and pounding on doors. The world's changed. And so, firms need to emulate the investments that Cetera is making to reach out and better address the needs of different communities. In addition, it's critical that you just don't talk, right? We are very aggressive in hiring different segments of the diverse community into our businesses, bringing them in as tuck-ins, bringing them in as subject matter experts, having the ability to bring them in as a successor to a practice. Firms have to stop talking about this and doing something. And I think Chantalle is just a tremendous example of Adam, our CEO, putting a stake in the ground and making a decision to make this a moral and economic imperative. And we're thrilled to be focusing on this issue because we do believe that it's going to help us to grow short-term and long-term.
Well, you know, your comments around investing in the colleges and into the high schools, that is certainly a longer term strategy. And, you know, it is one that will not begin paying dividends for 4, 8, 12 years. So you're laying the seed field for the type of organization that, you know, we all aspire to see. Are there, and it's not shortcuts, but are there things that organizations can do in the interim that can lift and evolve? You mentioned career changers as an example. Are there other ways that firms, or additional ways, because I do think what you've just said is imperative, because that lays the seed field for what, you know, truly next generation advisors are going to look like. But are there other things that emerging leaders can be thinking about where they can make small but strong shifts in their offices, their regions, et cetera, that'll accelerate this?
Sure. I'll throw out two things and throw it over to Chantal. First thing is just data, demographics. Our industry is aging. There are firms that have their average age of their advisors 70 years old. You need to address succession planning. You need to address practice acquisitions. Those two topics that we do through our business consulting division can jumpstart your ability to go and hire diverse candidates that you can seed in and give them a 3 to 5 year runway before taking over a book or before buying a book. That is, it's not a quick fix, because it's a lot of hard work. It doesn't really matter who you are. It's all the same hard work. The second area that I think is really important that we're very focused on is the you know, there is a larger pool percentage wise of women that are financial professionals in our industry. We are providing a more robust transition compensation package, as well as a more robust, more encompassing community and environment to help her come in and tuck in, to launch a new business, to buy a business, to become part of one of the 5 Cetera families. And we're aggressive at that right now. Those are 2 examples of practical things to jumpstart it. But Phil, think about this. Think about 10, 12, 15 years from now. If we make that seed investment, how beautiful our businesses are going to look down the road. You and I won't be here. Chantal will, but you know, we got to make that investment short term and long term.
Absolutely, no question about that. Chantal, as we were talking about the issue of investing in colleges and high schools, it took me back to, again, another comment that you shared in our pre-call, and I believe that you were holding a forum with a group of advisors, and you had a senior advisor. I wrote this down because I wanted to capture it right. Senior advisor said, "I think it's so great to send Black advisors into Black high schools." And you had the most beautiful and eloquent response to that. Close us out with this conversation on what that response was and why that really is at the essence of where we've got to go as an industry.
So first off, I think that comment came from one of the most well-meaning people I know on our platform. And I think it comes from a genuine desire to want to help. And so the conversation that he and I had, you know, enough kind of, you know, trust or psychological safety between us to have is, so take that and then make that be you, and let that, you know, African-American or Black student or non-white student see that you have an interest in showing him what your office looks like and what you do every day and how much you can earn long-term in this field, and how you're committed to growing and developing the people in your office or your practice. And what does that mean to see that from someone who doesn't look like you? That's the definition of advocacy and sponsorship. So it's amazing when it's me going to read to other young Black women. There's a tremendous amount of value in that. But it's really impactful when someone who doesn't look like you comes to you and says, who cares? I just want to see you succeed. And I hope and, think that that's where we are at this time, in the better part of our field, in the, bright and shiny part of our field. I think we recognize that, America is a country of immigrants, and it is a country of diverse people woven together. And as, civil rights become accessible to everyone, and as we evolve and grow into a global view, I think we're realizing that we're more alike than not. And really, just having the opportunity to sit and be near someone and share something with someone that you wouldn't normally have access to. If you're just slightly intentional about that, I think the gains that you can make into, your practice, your community, and ultimately the industry are tremendous.
Well, if there is one theme that has come clear from both comments that you and John have shared with us today, Chantalle, is a theme of intentionality. Our organizations have to be incredibly intentional, and that is both in thought, word, and in treasure with regard to how we are approaching this. And each one of us as individuals have to be intentional about our role and our responsibility in this. And you are so right. The simple act of engaging with another individual that doesn't look exactly like you, didn't grow up like you, didn't think like you, or doesn't, on certain issues think the way that you do. It is absolutely amazing when you are willing to engage that individual, how beautiful a relationship can be created. And that's all about intentionality. Chantalle Couba, I want to thank you. John Pierce, I want to thank you. This has been a very insightful, and it goes well beyond how excited I was at the beginning with what we've covered here today. I want to thank each of you for being here. Chantalle?
Thank you for allowing us the space to talk about this.
All right, John, thank you.
Thank you, my friend.